Hi, Douglas. Great to have you on board on one of these fireside chats. It's really interesting because you are definitely from that sort of safeguarding space, which I think is really, really mega important. It's normally in the top three most important aspects when we talk to mat leaders and head teachers. So it's really good to have you on board. So thanks for coming along.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you so much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to have a chat with you by the fireside. All we're missing is a glass of whiskey to make it a full fireside experience.
Well, glass of whiskey, and I've just noticed probably a fireside. I've gone for I've gone for a backdrop at the moment, but that's because I've got painters and no one wants to see this room for sure. So,
My background is swanky. I find myself in a Regis office today, but it's perfectly passable.
Regis workspaces are great. Yeah, I love the idea. They're all around the world as well. People should take them up more frequently. I think they're useful for
Yeah,
sure.
and good for mental health when this day and age when everybody's working from home on a regular basis. I'm pretty much exclusively at home except for the odd trip to London. So once a week, my wife likes to kick me out and spend a day in Edinburgh for my own mental health and hers. I'm a regular visitor here.
That's amazing. No, I'm with you. I think change of space. Do you know what before we start, there's this I don't know if you heard of the concept, the third space. It's a big thing since COVID. And the third space is the space where, you got home, obviously, which is your natural primary space. You
Mhm.
normally have a secondary space, and that could be anything, so something you might do, so going to the gym or doing something like that. But the third space is supposed to be the most important because it's the additional you getting out of the house, like as you just said. So getting out of the house, getting away from, what you do on a routine basis, and basically find another third space. Yeah, it's basically really, really important to your mental health, as you say.
Yeah, definitely.
Before we start, so Douglas, do you want to just talk a little bit about your background? Where you've come from, because I know we will get touch on safeguarding in a few minutes, and also Utropolis as well. Your latest and greatest of companies. But it'd be really good to just get a bit about your background and introduce yourself to people.
Yeah. Okay, sure, Nick. So I'm a technologist at heart. It's in my DNA. I did a degree in computer science at Edinburgh University, and came roaring out of there, passionate software developer, trying to get into the gnarliest opportunities and problems possible. So I spent my early years in system software development at Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC, which is probably on nobody's radar these days. It was a massive corporation back in the 70s and 80s and started going to decline in the 90s. But at one point, I mean, DEC equipment used to run all the ATMs, all the merchant banks, all the stock markets in the world. And they ran an ancient operating system called VMS. Well, it is ancient nowadays. I worked on that. I worked in network stack there and file system and in the clustering technology. So I really enjoyed that. But I realized that its days were numbered, so I had to jump on some other bandwagons and technology fashion. So I went on developing network management software in C++ and C for a few years, and then round about I think it was the 2000s when the Java bandwagon arrived. Jumped on board in that, started building rather than kind of system software, started building business applications. Did that for quite a few years, and then moved into systems integration space. Companies like Logica CMG and Capgemini, doing larger projects, leading bigger teams, being commercially aware of what I was doing, being more customer facing, and kind of growing in seniority there. And I continued on that path to say in the last maybe 10 or 12 years, I've been a technology leader, typically as a CTO, usually in a private equity context, either as a CTO for a portfolio company or, well, doing that and doing it on a full time on an interim basis, or providing consultancy services into PE firms about when to buy and sell organizations, doing diligence activities around there. So part of that journey, probably one of my most favored and enjoyable parts of that journey, was almost 4 years at a Leeds company called Smoothwall, where we did a lot of work in the safeguarding and web filtering space. Um, and that was, gosh, that was the 2017 to 20, what, 20, well, 20, to 2017 to 2020, just in the middle of 2020. So just shy of 4 years. And after that, that was a period of real hands-on software development, which, as I said, I'm passionate about. And I was lucky enough to be able to work with a team of around 60 engineers. So I was still hands-on, was involved in technology decisions and directions and day-to-day operations. After that, I kind of moved into a more senior roles, and I wound up at a company called Iris, where I was in charge of 400 engineers. Iris is one of the biggest private software development companies in Europe. And well, that was enjoyable. And Iris is a great company. I found that I'd gone too far away from the technology, and I wanted to come back to that. So I spent a year at Iris as interim and decided not to take a full-time role there, and I wanted to get back into software development. So I think over the last 18 months, 2 years, in and around keeping food on the table, I've been progressing the bootstrapping of Utropolis, which is one of the things I think we want to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's amazing. You've had a very varied career, and obviously with massive companies. I'm guessing when you talk about RS as well, are you talking about the RS in education, or are you talking about a different?
Well, yeah, Iris, they've got a portfolio of about 70 products spanning accountancy, payroll, and edtech.
So it's
Um,
still the same.
so yes, the and yes, so that's that same Iris.
Wow. Oh wow, amazing, amazing. So you've been in education really in some way, one shape or form for the last 7 years or so.
Yes.
And RS.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. So yeah, with us, so safeguarding is obviously something which you're reasonably passionate about. So why safeguarding? Why is that so important to you?
Well, um, I mean, it's something hard not to be passionate about when it comes down to looking after our next generation, our kids. I'm a father, and growing up, when my kids were growing up, I was very, very earnest in making sure that they didn't get to see the things that are unseeable on the internet and have immediately harmful impact. Things that you can't, you're effectively their innocence is stolen from them
Hmm.
uh, at an earlier age than should be the case. And so it's just like a natural protective instinct, I think everybody probably has around safeguarding. I was lucky enough to be involved in the smooth wall, and we moved the needle there, technology wise. But um, based upon my experiences there and conversations with teachers and DSLs and IT admins over the last 18 months, it feels like there's still very much room for improvement. And so I'm taking the opportunity to see if I can go again and improve matters further.
And ultimately, so Utropolis is very much um, similar in some ways to Smooth Wall in the sense of so tell me where I'm wrong here. So basically is almost still like a filter, basically looking for, those, as you say, those sort of dangerous websites or for websites which are basically, will oh, what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost like opening up a little bit like the Pandora's box, and it's not the sort of thing you want to be opening in lots of
Hmm.
cases. So it basically does a lot of web filtering. So people will be aware of Smoothwall who are listening to this. So what do you think is the difference, and what are you trying to do which is different with Utropolis?
Well, I think we are going to be generationally different in terms of the technology and the approach, not just technology, but the approach. So, I mean, it's a marketplace that's been around for about 30 years.
Hmm.
There are lots of incumbents in the marketplace in the UK, in the US, Australia, international schools. Um, and the technology has evolved and it's improving, but I think there's there's a need to not just change the technology or improve technology, but address the people, the process, and the technology to introduce in effect, a new operating model,
Hmm.
which is better placed to address the challenges that still continue to exist in schools today. And so those challenges are just, it seems like they've been there for a long time, and despite the best efforts of many organizations, haven't quite eradicated them yet. So no web filtering technology is going to be 100% foolproof, but it feels like there's still plenty of opportunity to improve the situation for many stakeholders. So and the kinds of challenges that we see continuing to exist are things like the overburdening of IT admins. So it's just one person typically, or a very, very small team, who are being tasked with addressing overblocking or underblocking issues on a daily basis. That's in and around their day job. And so they don't have the time to do that. And
Hmm.
are regularly, they're quite fearful of making changes to web filtering technologies or configurations or policies because it's hard to do. It's hard to get that thing right without pulling at one string and undoing a configuration at in some other part of the tapestry. So it's hard for them to do, and so they spend a lot of time doing that. Which or not, which is kind of a segue into the second frustration, which is teachers. They go about delivering online classes on a more regular basis, but we're seeing cases where teachers are in the middle of delivering a class, and an overblocking situation arises, and the poor IT admin is unresponsive, or the IT services organization that runs filtering for the MAT or the local authority is unresponsive because for the same reasons. We've heard anecdotes of teachers in some cases out of frustration, well, tethering their laptop to their mobile phone so that they can get on and bypass the web filter, and knowing that what they're showing to the class is good online educational resources, but they can't. So they're bypassing the kind of the educational systems that they're supposed to be using because of the kind of the blunt instrument effect of that's in place today. And if they don't do that, then typically they'll abandon the class, abandon the use of that planned online resource, and then have to reschedule and redesign their class to go somewhere else on the internet. And then lastly, the converse of the overblocking is the underblocking, whereby still today, this year, last year, on a regular basis, we see instances where children, primary school children, the example here is primary school children in in a library in Edinburgh, were accessing hardcore online porn, decapitations, horrific stuff like that in a library in a primary school. That was in October last year, and in December last year, the Edinburgh local authority had to write to teachers, to parents, to say, "I'm really sorry. There's been a misconfiguration on our iPads. The iPads that we give to your children are unsafe, and in the interim, can you please help out?" Because it was going to take them a long time, so long to resolve the issue technically, that they had to rely upon the assistance of the parents to to avoid any incidents. So I mean that's only 8 months ago, and this year there's similar incidents in the US in January, and I think in just was it May this year, children accidentally seeing that unseeable content, which is immediately damaging. So, so I mean, these are the kinds of challenges we think we can do a better job of by holistically looking at technology, people, and processes in a brand new operating model.
Excellent. Oh, wow. Because the idea that basically, when you say that, so when in Edinburgh, they're basically asking the parents to help with the filtering of what their children were seeing.
I think they were saying, can you kind of curate activities at home with these devices? Because we were unable to give you security guarantees or safety guarantees at the moment because of the deficiencies that we're experiencing.
Wow. And what's your view on AI in the sense of when it comes, because AI, will AI, do you think it's going to make it all more complicated in the sense of will it basically um, change. I suppose because the purpose for, let's face it, for a lot of the people who are on the other side of these is that they want to get to, as many faces as possible. They don't really care if it's children, adults, or anything else. And do you think the use of AI is actually just going to make that harder for people like yourself, Utropolis and for Smoothball and people like that, or do you think actually it's just the same, just it's the same but just different sort of gravy, basically?
I think it's the same fundamental arms race, which we want to address in a similar manner. So there's always been this kind of war between people trying to um, bring unsavory content out there, regardless of who accesses it, or people who are even trying to proactively, as bad actors, engage with youngsters and students. And and meanwhile, there are people in the marketplace, the incumbent product providers and service providers, who are trying to wage war against that activity.
Mm.
But so so AI brings a new dimension to that warfare, but fundamentally it doesn't change um, what I think is the foundational difficulty, which is that you we're asking in some cases a siloed IT admin, maybe with the help of a DSL, to stay ahead of that front line, that warfare, or we've got product vendors, each within their own silo, doing their own best activity to try and stay ahead of the bad guys and make
Mm.
sure that their configurations and their screens and filters are as up to date as possible. But that's the issue. It's kind of siloed individuals trying to take on the internet, the hulking internet, and all the badness that's out there.
Yeah.
And I think that mismatch, that asymmetry, is one of the key things that we want to try and address, so that we can have balance the terms of the engagement and more in favor of the good guys rather than the bad guys.
Which is definitely commendable for sure. So t tell me a little bit. So this is my, probably my naivety as much as anything else. But a lot of the web filters that I've been in contact with, so like Birmingham, I know Birmingham had a web filter, and basically then, but there were still people behind there, basically making sure either it was blocked or if a child was looking at particular types of sites, harmful sites, whatever sites it might be, then that sort of information was then recorded onto a system like CPOMs or or safeguarding company or wherever it might be. Is so when it comes to Utropolis, is that based on just the filtering element, or are you trying to encompass both?
So initially, we'll be looking at filtering and safeguard monitoring um, together, but initially from a web filtering perspective.
Yeah.
There are other technologies you can put in place which monitor keystrokes and are more kind of active on the device, as it were. But for our first tranche of releases, we're going to be web filtering focused with a view of controlling content access, but also providing advisory notices and reports and insights on any safeguarding concerns that come out of those analyses and those web filtering activities.
And when is your first release?
So we've got an MVP today,
Mm.
and we are working with some partners to get some early adopters on board and exercise our technology as it is
Yeah.
today. But we've that's very early stages, and we've got an ambition and a vision beyond just the technology. Well, there's always technology enabling our vision, but we've got a vision around how to fundamentally change that asymmetry between the bad guys and the good guys, which we want to put in place.
Yep.
Which I can tell you a bit about if you like.
Yeah, yeah, go for it. Yeah. Sounds interesting.
So, so I mentioned like a net new operating model, and that operating model involves people, process, and technology. On the technology side of things, the where we position ourselves is as a true cloud web filter. So there's a lot of there's different web filtering is quite an interesting technological challenge which can be addressed in many different ways. But there are two fundamental models in place in the marketplace today. There's people who are um, installing agents on devices, and there are organizations who are looking to provide a centralized cloud filtering solution. We believe that the centralized cloud filtering solution is better for customers, for schools, for MATs, and local authorities. It's easier to consume. It's easier to deploy. It doesn't take up any resources on a device. And I think most importantly, any configuration changes you make to stay, to address, almost that hour by hour warfare against the bad actors. Any changes you make are instantaneously available to everybody who's wired into the Utropolis platform. Whereas with the device-centric approach, where organizations are having to manage hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions of devices, they can't be updated instantaneously. It varies. It could be once a day, it could be twice a day, but even with best intentions, laptops can be closed, devices can be offline. It just takes a lot longer to get the latest and greatest configurations onto a device than it is through a centralized cloud platform.
Yeah.
So that's our technology um, preference and tack that we're on. But on top of that, that's a platform. We want to make available on top of that a collaboration facility whereby it's not just Utropolis and our team of analysts trying to stay on top of the bad guys and the trends and the latest risks. We want to bring on board teachers, DSLs, maybe even parents who can proactively, based upon their experiences with in the classroom, in the playground, at home, identify net new risks and help us translate those into the right kinds of configurations which help us spot URLs or patterns in our web filtering analysis to 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 make that available instantaneously and protect kids as soon as possible. So that's a kind of a collaboration facility. So it's kind of like crowdsourcing web filtering configuration
Yeah.
facilities.
Yeah.
And that's kind of round one of the rebalancing of the terms of engagement. And that's so we've got, that's part of our roadmap, making that facility available on that centralized platform. And then layer two on top of that is um, sharing of policies around those known risks. So risks and content types. So we've got a wide range of schools in the UK, in the US, Australia, internationally, um, all with their own preferences, all with their own value systems, all with their own kind of cultural and ethnic mixtures, who will have a different view on what an appropriate policy is for allowing those kids to access the internet. Uh, Again, what we see in the marketplace today is IT admins or maybe a service provider are tasked with regularly from a blank sheet of paper building a policy which tracks the value system of the school, maintains safety, is cognizant of the age of the child accessing the internet, and it stays up to date with risks. Managing all of those dimensions is very challenging. And as
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier on, IT admins are reluctant to go in and make changes there because of the complexity and the risk of introducing unintended consequences from trying to fix the latest and greatest risk that's been found. So what we want to do is make policies a shareable entity on the platform. Um, you can think of these policies as being published in a GitHub type manner. So it's got a description, a vision, a clear articulation of what it's trying to achieve, and they're built by peer groups. For example, a set of conservative schools in the middle of the US versus a set of schools in California versus, I don't know, some libertarian school in the UK. Each one will have their own view of what a good policy looks like, what
Yeah.
we're going to allow them to do is collaborate to build those policies which reflect their value systems but are safe and are evolvable in this manner. So once a peer group creates a policy for a particular bent or nature, they think it's working well for them, they can publish it. Somebody else can take that, download it, integrate it into well, download, plug it into their tenant in the cloud, and evolve that if they want, republish it, fork it. So it's very much like a GitHub-based collaboration around these policies, so that nobody's confronted with a blank sheet of paper. You've got people collaborating to tame the complexity of managing these policies. It's almost like it's got kind of open source type connotations to it. I think it was Eric, what was his name? Eric Raymond back in the 90s. He wrote a book called The Cathedral and the Bazaar, which compared and contrasted siloed corporate development of software with the open source community and ethos.
Yeah.
And one of the quips that came away from that book and which was very popular for a while was um, me with many eyes, all bugs are shallow. So all bugs are tractable, all problems are resolvable.
Yeah.
And I see that being a similar thing with policy collaboration, with many eyes of DSLs and IT admins on board, building, testing, deploying, sharing, iterating. I see a much safer place where the right policies can be put in place.
That's great. Do you know, just for people who don't understand GitHub, it's obviously a development tool that basically is used for sharing, and I can't remember all the things it can do, but it basically it's effectively very similar to Confluence. Is that right?
It's more but Confluence is like a documentation platform, whereas GitHub is where well, in fact, some people share how-tos and FAQs to GitHub, but it's mainly code is shared in GitHub,
Okay.
and kind of the policies that we will have shared in that kind of manner are effectively, you can imagine it, but like a big file of JSON, which is JavaScript object notation, which defines the content of the policy, how it behaves, integration points, and so forth. And we've got on the stocks some pretty sophisticated visualization tools so that people around the world can look at this library of policies and see which ones most attuned or aligned to their value system, their school type, their outlook of the world, so that they can zoom in pretty quickly on something which is very aligned to them, take it, plug it into their tenant, and get underway.
And are you using AI across this at all?
Well, absolutely. So it's very much a HI, human intelligence collaboration platform, but most definitely we've got AI engines helping to tame what the complexity of managing people and providing those kinds of configuration settings, complex configuration settings, in a safe and meaningful manner, which can be deployed onto the platform without corrupting it or in some way degrading the overall performance or integrity of the system. So AI is kind of not secondary, but kind of, it's got HI and AI working together in harmony to build that utopian sort of vision.
Well, I think it'd be really interesting to get your opinion as well on AI in the sense of, so where do you, so it's obviously got its limitations. You know, we all talk about the hallucinations, sometimes it doesn't get it right, all those sort of things. But where do you see, so, but at the same time, if you're not on the train, as it were, then you're already behind the curve. What's your take on AI? What would you be your recommendations to people who are listening?
In terms of using it as a technology for good,
Yep.
well, I mean, it's eminently applicable to the world of web filtering because LLMs have intrinsic contextual understanding of language. So it's incredibly useful for tuning your platform, background operational analysis of content, and then using those capabilities to make sure that you're properly assessing content, and also in our case, proactively understanding content. So regularly, web filters do their job kind of reactively as content comes through. But we've got facilities in place whereby we proactively see content which is uncategorized, take stock of that, and make sure that next time through the loop that we're already aware of that content, what it is, what a category is, and so it can be appropriately policed or subjected to policies.
I'm guessing then there's an element of be careful, but and actually, I suppose it depends if you create your own agent and that sort of stuff. I suppose with AI, in the sense of you can be a bit more in control than if it's an open.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to, there are the two fundamental challenges you need to be cognizant of and engineer um, safeguards around is the hallucination aspect of LLMs, which I think are much more pernicious than people regularly realize, but also the stochastic nature of LLMs. You know, they are the responses they provide are random by nature, by design,
Mm,
to improve the um, I guess the human-like na flavor of the responses they provide. If you're using an LLM off the shelf and with prompts, then you ask it the same thing twice, you're going to get a different answer. Not radically different, but it will be different enough that you need to be aware of that risk and engineer appropriate controls in place to deal with that. So you know that it's very, very powerful, but you need to yoke that power in a way which is safe.
yeah. And so where's next for you, Utropolis? So I'm guessing you've got your MVP. You're working with a bunch of customers in sort of like you say to basically get them to I suppose try and I always say try and break the product. So basically that's the idea, and
Yep.
identify maybe some other priorities that you need to change in the product. So
Yep.
when do you perceive the next release, as it were? Because there's never really a full release. Because I always find with software, nothing ever really stops.
Exactly. Especially with a cloud-based, essentially SaaS type model that we've got. We can release, you know, multiple times a day, and it's immediately available to our customers. So, but the next big release or set of releases will be around those collaboration concepts. So we're finalizing our UX designs, which are fundamental to making sure that people can work together in an effective manner
Hmm.
to share those risks, identify them, categorize them, disseminate them, approve them, and then get them propagated in the system. And then also the kind of probably more complex exercise around the sharing and management of policies amongst the communities. So the UX for those aspects are the design's underway. I think we probably be looking to start to ship some of that fundamentally new concept from a product category point of view in the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay. The next big thing is community as much as anything else, which I do love the idea of, by the way. I'm a massive big believer in new community basically supporting itself and supporting obviously the companies and suppliers which are in the market. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
we're excited to see how it's received.
yeah, indeed. And are you open? So just if people are listening, are you open to more people being part of your MVPs and your the next stages and stuff, or are you? Whereabouts are you?
No, absolutely. We've definitely got capacity to take on some more early adopters. Anybody who's interested in the vision that we've just shared, yeah, please do get in contact, and we'd be delighted to get a conversation started.
Sounds good. It sounds good. So Douglas, what is your plan for the next 3 years? How do you see this all planning out?
Well, gosh, so 3 years.
It's
I
a big
think
time
I think
in software.
so road mapping on the fly here. So obviously you spend your life oscillating from a more fine-grained, immediate-term priorities and roadmaps to longer-term strategic visions and goals. Heads very much in the short 3 to 6 months just now. Longer term, the next, say, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, the vision would be for our collaboration platform to have been road tested in the UK, and matured and expanded, and we've got a lot of people on board, and we've proved that kind of the vision, that collaboration vision, and then beyond that, it's a geographical progression into the US and other English-speaking organizations, countries. But one of the cool things about our fundamentally different approach, the collaboration-based approach, the wisdom of crowds-based approach, is that it's language agnostic.
Hmm.
So whereas a lot of organizations have had difficulty expanding beyond the English speaking marketplace, that should not be an impediment to us given the model that we're adopting. So we should be able to go into Middle East, Asia Pacific, and these organizations bring on board cohorts of collaborators, and very, very quickly have the platform up to snuff to do a very, very good job of filtering and safeguarding students all around the world.
Amazing. That's one hell of a vision as well. I love it. I love it. I always believe that you should reach for the stars. There's no, at the end of the day, if you reach for the roof, as it were, then you hit the ceiling, don't you? But if you reach for the stars, then you'll get to the clouds at least, sort of type scenario. That's what I always believe in anyway.
The old big, hairy, ambitious goal, the BHAG.
I've got one really last question for you. So if so, again, this is for some of the listeners as they may be startups, there might be people who have not been in the number of corporations and stuff. What would be, say, two of the biggest learning points that you've had from this journey so far with Utopia,
Um,
Utropolis, sorry.
that's all right. To learn, so I would say that bootstrapping a startup is hard. It's harder than you expect. It takes longer than you think. Be prepared for that. So that's learning point number one. Learning point number two is that despite that, there always seems to be a way to gather very, very capable and talented people around about you who share the same vision, ambitions, and goals, and are willing to love working in with technology for the greater good. So hang in there.
Yeah, I agree. I think the bootstrapping thing in fact, we put something up just quite recently about bootstrapped sort of the buying cycle is getting longer in education, which just makes it a little bit harder because obviously, for any return on investment that you put in, then that you have to accept that long buying cycle, which is not necessarily easy, but also you find sometimes it's hard to then find investment as well. So I think, it's one of these things where you're right, stick in there and as long as you've got the right solution for the right problem, you will do all right. But it is a long cycle in education.
Yeah, well, now that we're at the position where we're getting customers onto our MVP platform, we expect to go back into a kind of investment round,
Yeah.
and having demonstrated our product market fits, and being able to articulate and demonstrate our kind of quite unique and fundamentally different vision for this product category, that we'll be able to get some funding which will accelerate matters way more than the current bootstrapping that's gone on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, excellent. Douglas, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you. You're a busy person, so it's really good to have you on board and people to be able to listen to, what you've got to say in your journey, which I think is really, really important. So yeah, massive thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, Nick, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you and share some of our visions.
Yeah, and if there's anybody out there and you want to sort of look at something a bit different when it comes to web filtering, then Utropolis is the place to go and yeah, go and contact. And I'm sure Douglas will be more than happy to have a conversation with you.
Most definitely. Thank you again, Nick.